What do you think of when you think of the word feminism? Do you think this woman, or perhaps this woman? Either way, they're both wrong. Merriam-Webster defined this word as theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, which means, in every shape and form, both genders being on completely equal grounds. But this raises a lot of questions. Constitutional questions, like the debates over abortion or equal wages. Without trying to get too political here, what could we really understand about modern feminism, and how could we use the past as a figure to try and map out where we are as of today? Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. Women had it pretty rough. They were continually disregarded, they were never taken seriously, and they were kind of just seen as women of the house, ultimately is the basic truth of it. Because of this, they were consequently and entirely stripped of all of their basic human rights, including voting, having a voice, or simply being seen in the workplace similarly or being paid similarly to men for the same amount of work. In fact, in the case of Abigail Adams, who, if you don't know, is the wife to Senator John Adams around the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence and ultimately the U.S. Constitution, wrote to her husband while they were working on the Declaration of Independence, stating, quote-unquote, "Remember the ladies." And he laughed. He laughed in her face. However, as time went on, Congress actually began to believe that they were restricting women of their rights for their own sakes and their own welfare.
Ha! Ladies can't take responsibility for their own actions themselves.
For centuries in America, women had to fight for their right to vote, to become educated, and choose their work, because otherwise, they couldn't. However, this all began to change. The Seneca Falls Convention on July 19th through the 20th of 1848 proved to be a powerful step forward, and saw for the drafting of the Declaration of Sentiments, written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The document's purpose was to act as a revision to the Declaration of Independence previously written by the founding fathers of our country, but changed to accommodate for the equality and the basic rights of women as well as men. A direct quote from the Declaration is a revamped version of the original preamble, which goes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal," rather than just merely the all men are created equal in the initial Declaration of Independence. Since the convention, the women's rights movement succeeded in small waves. Women fought for such basic rights as their roles in family, improved education, and fair wages/economic opportunities. Even with such resilient leaders as Stanton and Susan B. Anthony fighting for economic strengthening towards women, Congress had denied them time and time again, including the inclusion of women in the 14th and 15th Amendments. During the Civil War, the focus of suffrage groups temporarily shifted exclusively towards just the right to vote. This also led to the creation of the National Women's Suffrage Association, the NWSA, who opposed the 15th Amendment and fought federal law, and the American Women's Suffrage Association, or the AWSA, which was less racially divisive than the NWSA. Nope, you ain't gonna be finding a division and discrimination here, folks. It just don't exist, as well as fighting the state more. The 1800s saw much difficulty for the women's rights movement, as the AWSA and the NWSA could not get male politicians to take their movement seriously enough. Ha! Stupid women! What? Do they think they were like people or something? However, a lot of this started to change as women in droves began to start taking volunteer positions, including those in progressive causes, members of women's clubs or professional societies, temperance advocates, and acting in local civic and charity organizations. In 1990, both groups united as one, founding the National American Women's Suffrage Association. This led to the great diversity amongst the women community and made the cause that much more powerful. The NWSA focused primarily on gaining the right to vote in the states, in hopes that it would lead to federal law eventually. Sadly, though, this would be a long time to come. By 1896, they had already gained Colorado, Utah, and Idaho for women's voting rights. 1910 to 1914 meant the addition of states such as Washington, California, Arizona, Kansas, and Oregon. Also, in 1908, a court case in Oregon, known as Mueller versus Oregon, provided the claim for laundry workers working 10-hour days that women differ in physical capabilities and strengths comparative to men. They used this as a reason to place the laws against their ability to work. Ruth Hanna McCormick paved the way for women's suffrage in Illinois, however, and got the state women's right to vote in 1913. A year later, Montana granted women the same, thanks to Jeanette Rankin, who, like McCormick, would become a future congresswoman. In the same year, a Quaker woman named Alice Paul would form the rival Congressional Union, which would later become the National Women's Party. They performed the more militant acts during the suffrage movement, including rallies and marches to spread an awareness of their their cause. By 1917, both Arkansas and New York saw for the granting of the right to vote for women. This year also saw Woodrow Wilson start the process of the passing of the 19th Amendment, which, if you don't know, is the amendment that allows for women to be able to vote. The 19th Amendment was finally passed in 1920 and was finalized in 1922 by the court case Lesser versus Garnett. Or Garnett, I don't know how you pronounce that. It was basically considered to completely contradict the Supreme Court's original reasoning of ratifying both the 14th and the 15th Amendments to deny women of the right to vote objectively. A year after Lesser versus Garnett would see for the passing of Adkins versus Children's Hospital, which is a court case that set the precedent that setting a separate minimum wage for women was unconstitutional and that women possessed the right to set wages. So women got the right to vote and they got to have equal minimum wage? Wow, this is really seeing for some positive changes here. Oh boy. However, it did get rid of a bunch of other problems, which is kind of an important thing. While court cases dealt with such things as freedom of speech, sexual discrimination, birth control, and even women fighting in the front lines, along with women fighting in the front lines, one of the biggest lines of debate within the women's rights movement as of today came from the court case Roe versus Wade in 1973, which basically considered it unconstitutional to deny women of their right to get an abortion, although protecting the unborn child's life would come with a firm balance in this sense. On one hand, this woman should have the constitutional right to be able to decide to get the abortion, but on the other hand, the child should have a constitutional right to life and liberty as well. So it's a slippery slope all around. And that leads to one of the major modern debates as of today. Abortion. Pro-choice, pro-life, whatever you are, everyone has an opinion on it. But this video isn't about that. This video is to just explore where it came from, and perhaps where we could gain a little bit of perspective from this. However, to kind of stray away from this point, let's ask ourselves this question. How far have women truly come to becoming equal to men? Go on, you can be honest. Well, whereas we have come very far, we've still got a little ways to go. And yes, do I disagree with a lot of the women rioting and protesting about how much we're a bunch of misogynistic, I'm talking about men by the way, a bunch of misogynistic, selfish pigs? No, I would not agree with that in the slightest. But do I agree that women should have a voice and women should be able to stick up for these rights that they are constitutionally allowed to have? Yes, absolutely. I believe that anyone, any American, any man, woman, child, regardless of race, gender, or any type of social class similar to that, any man, woman, or child should have basic rights given to them by birth. Nobody should be restricted to that. And so, I'll leave you off on one note. If there's anything that any of us can do, that would be to learn from our history, learn from our past, learn from where we came from, so that we can better work towards making a better future for all of us. Not just a select group of us, not just a select anybody, but all of us, as human beings, as people. Thank you so much. Have a great day.